Envision a river crossing in central France. In the autumn of 732, a force from al-Andalus pushed deeper than any had before. This was not the first raid. It was the deepest. And at that river crossing, near Tours, they found something unexpected. Someone who would not move. To understand the encounter, you have to understand the speed of what preceded it. In barely 2 decades, the Umayyad Caliphate crossed from North Africa into Iberia, shattered the Visigothic kingdom, and began probing beyond. Speed was their instrument, and speed requires the other side to have nothing in place. Aquitaine had already been struck. Duke Odo, who had resisted both Franks and Umayyads, found his territory hit hard in 732. He had no good options. So he turned to the man he had long treated as a rival and asked for help. The help that came was Charles, later called Martel. He was not a king, but a mayor of the palace, power behind a ceremonial throne. He had spent years building something the Frankish realm lacked, a professional heavy infantry that could hold a line. The Franks chose the ground. They positioned themselves on a ridge between the Clain and Vienne rivers, terrain that limited cavalry sweep. Abd al-Rahman, the Umayyad commander, had a force built for mobility, the kind of strike that had worked everywhere before. Here the ground refused him that option. For 7 days, neither side moved decisively. The Frankish infantry held the ridge. Umayyad cavalry tested the flanks, found no opening, and returned. Both commanders calculated. Both read the other's willingness to absorb costs. Neither side lacked strength. What they lacked was certainty. Each hour without contact forced a decision that could not be reversed. Advance too early and the ground would decide against you. Wait too long and momentum would begin to fade. On the 7th day, Abd al-Rahman decided the moment had come. He was not wrong about the need to act. He was wrong about the ground. The cavalry charge came. Fast, direct, aimed at the center. The Frankish infantry locked shields and held. This was the moment the whole encounter had been building toward. Not a clever trap, not a flanking maneuver. A formation that simply refused to break. It did not advance. It did not pursue. It held position and absorbed force. This was not designed to win quickly. It was designed to endure longer than the attack could sustain itself and force the outcome to change over time. The Frankish shield wall absorbed the charge. The Umayyad cavalry withdrew, regrouped, and charged again. This was the pattern their force had perfected, repeated impact until the line broke. But the Frankish line did not break. What broke was the pattern. Abd al-Rahman himself was killed in the fighting. The exact circumstances uncertain. Without its commander, the force lost coordination. Controlled cavalry action became fragmented withdrawal. The Franks held the field. By morning, the Umayyad force had withdrawn entirely. The Franks formed for battle, expecting a second engagement. None came. The camp was abandoned. The army had retreated south during the night. The longer-term result, political as much as military. Charles Martel used the reputation of Tours to consolidate his position. His son Pépin took the royal title. His grandson became Charlemagne. Tours did not create the Carolingian Empire, but it was the beginning of the sequence that did. What is more certain? is what happened next. The Umayyad advance beyond the Pyrenees did not repeat at this scale. Charles consolidated. The Frankish realm became the dominant power in Western Europe for the next century. And Charles himself, who had no royal title, who ruled through administrative authority, found his reputation transformed by a battle he had prepared for but could not fully control. Martel means the hammer. The name was earned. The Umayyad Caliphate did not collapse at Tours. It remained the dominant power of the Mediterranean for another century. Iberia remained under Islamic rule for another 700 years. Tours was a limit, not a defeat. Leadership visibility becomes decisive at such moments. When a commander falls, orders fail to propagate, confidence falters. Abd al-Rahman dies, and cohesion deteriorates. The collapse is sequential. Units withdraw unevenly. Darkness approaches. What had been an organized campaign dissolves into survival-driven movement. By nightfall, the field reflects the shift. The Frankish formation remains intact. The opposing force has thinned and withdrawn. The northern frontier stabilizes. Raids will occur again, but not with the same depth. What cannot be debated, mobility met cohesion, and cohesion did not fracture. In the long arc of history, battles acquire meaning beyond their mechanics. This one becomes associated with continuity, a line held under pressure, not a story of sudden conquest. It is a story of endurance. An army built for motion encountered a formation built for absorption. The latter remained coherent long enough to claim the field. The fight ends. The argument about its weight begins. Two armies faced each other in the autumn of 732 near a river crossing in central France. One came from the south with momentum. One stood on a ridge and held. 7 days of waiting. 1 day of contact. By the following morning, the force from the south was gone. Neither side fully understood what had just happened. What Tours left behind is not a simple story. It is a moment when movement reached its limit, when a force built for cavalry speed encountered a force built for infantry stillness. The cavalry came, the infantry held, the cavalry's commander died. And the force built for stillness was still there in the morning. On a ridge it had chosen and defended and refused to leave. The hammer held the line. The line held the West. Whether the West understood what had been held took centuries to work out. Some still argue. Most called it a shield for Christendom. Others as a raid that met its limit. And nothing more. But one fact remains. Two armies faced each other near Tours, and one side did not yield. And the question survives. What did Europe become because that line held? And what would it have become if it broke?